In the world of human connection, one of the most misunderstood principles is the power of detachment. Many believe that in order to keep someone close, to rekindle a connection, or to make someone long for them, they must chase, plead, or demonstrate constant availability. Yet, the paradox is simple. The more you pursue, the more your energy becomes predictable, and predictability kills desire. Attraction is not built on insistence or on constant presence. It is built on absence, on the subtlety of being, and on the inner certainty that you are complete with or without someone's attention. Detachment is not coldness. It is a quiet, unwavering clarity that your happiness and your sense of self are not dependent on external validation. When you embrace this, something almost magnetic begins to happen. Detachment works because it creates space for reflection, for longing, for imagination. When someone is constantly chasing another, the mind rarely has a chance to pause. There is no room to consider what is being lost, what is being missed, or what the other person represents. When you step back, when you stop showing urgency, you stop participating in the predictable cycle of demand and reaction. In that space, the mind begins to replay memories, conversations, and moments that may have been taken for granted. Your absence becomes a mirror. It forces him to see himself in relation to you, to measure his own desire, and to confront the reality that he cannot force or recreate what he has allowed to drift. There is an energy in detachment that cannot be faked. It is not a tactic of manipulation, it is a state of being. When you detach, you are not withdrawing in fear, insecurity, or anger. You are withdrawing from neediness, from over-investment, from a pursuit that diminishes your power. You are telling the universe, silently and profoundly, that your value is not contingent on being wanted in a certain way. This clarity resonates on a level deeper than logic. It reaches the part of the human mind that is drawn to mystery, to challenge, to the thrill of seeking what seems just beyond reach. Magnetism emerges naturally from detachment because it is rooted in confidence. Confidence is not loud, it is not desperate, it is simply present. When someone senses that you are fully inhabiting your own life, that your joy and your growth are independent of them, an undeniable pull forms. He may not immediately understand it. He may resist it, rationalize it, or distract himself with other attachments, but the pull is there, subconscious, creeping into thoughts when least expected. Detachment communicates abundance. It says, without words, that you are enough, that you are whole, that you do not need permission or approval to shine. Another subtle force of detachment is the way it disrupts expectation. Humans are conditioned to respond to patterns. If someone is always available, always attentive, always responsive, the mind adapts and eventually takes it for granted. There is no urgency, no emotional tension, no spark. Detachment breaks this pattern. It introduces uncertainty, but not fear, into the dynamic. He does not know when you will reach out, when you will appear, or how you are living your life beyond his view. That uncertainty is not confusion, it is intrigue. It is the fertile ground of imagination, longing, and reflection. Detachment also allows the natural process of emotional recalibration. When you are constantly present, constantly chasing, the emotional scale between you is skewed. Your energy is overextended, his energy under-challenged. When you detach, the scale shifts. He is compelled to re-evaluate his own feelings, his priorities, and his actions. He begins to wonder why you are no longer so easily accessible. He begins to question whether he truly appreciated the connection when it was effortless, or whether he took for granted what he assumed would always be there. Detachment invites introspection, which is far more powerful than confrontation. It is not about teaching him a lesson. It is about creating conditions in which he faces the truth of his desire and attachment. It is important to note that detachment is not passive. It is not retreating out of fear, anger, or avoidance. It is an active cultivation of self-respect, focus, and presence in your own life. You engage fully with your passions, your growth, your friendships, and your ambitions. You live richly, joyfully, expansively, without the need to prove anything, and it is from this fullness that magnetism arises. The energy you radiate is not conditional. It is not a performance designed to elicit attention. It is simply the natural byproduct of someone who knows their worth and refuses to compromise it for approval or validation. When detachment is fully embodied, the effect can be profound. Even if he is with someone else, even if the connection seems lost, there exists a gravitational pull that is difficult to resist. Your absence, combined with your unwavering self-possession, creates a space that no one else can occupy. Memories, emotions, and desires that may have been dormant suddenly awaken. He is compelled not by manipulation, but by the natural consequence of your freedom and your magnetic presence. Detachment shifts the dynamic completely. The chase reverses. The power returns to you. You are no longer the one reaching, the one pleading, or the one proving your value. You are the one who is fully yourself, and in doing so you become unforgettable, irresistible, and profoundly magnetic. Silence is often misunderstood. In a culture of constant communication, endless notifications, and the pressure to respond immediately, silence can feel uncomfortable, even wrong. Many believe that to maintain connection, to preserve influence, or to regain attention, one must speak, explain, justify, or prove themselves at every opportunity. Yet, paradoxically, it is in silence that respect is cultivated, boundaries are honored, and magnetism is amplified. When used with clarity and intentionality, silence is not emptiness, it is a powerful, living presence that communicates more than words ever could. The first way silence reveals respect is by demonstrating self-possession. When someone chooses not to respond to every impulse, demand, or provocation, they are showing that their time, energy, and emotional capacity are not at the disposal of another. They are communicating, without uttering a single word, that they are sovereign over their own life. This is profoundly magnetic because human beings instinctively recognize and gravitate towards strength. Weakness often seeks attention, constantly filling silence with noise. Strength, however, knows the value of space, the weight of absence, and the power of unspoken boundaries. Silence also allows reflection to emerge. When we are constantly present, constantly reactive, the other person rarely has the opportunity to pause and truly consider the dynamics between us. Thoughts become habitual, emotions unexamined, and presence taken for granted. By stepping into silence, you create a gap in which reflection can occur. In that space, memories are revisited, feelings resurface, and the mind begins to reckon with the subtle layers of connection, attachment, and desire that may have been overlooked. The human mind is drawn to patterns, but it is also drawn to what is missing. Silence introduces a missing piece that demands attention, even subconsciously, compelling the other person to confront their own choices and behaviors. Another dimension of silence is that it fosters emotional equilibrium. When someone is reactive, constantly explaining, justifying, or persuading, emotional energy becomes unbalanced. One person is overextended, overinvested, and vulnerable to the fluctuations of the other's moods. Silence recalibrates this scale. It is not withdrawal in anger or fear. It is a conscious choice to preserve emotional stability, to maintain dignity, and to honor one's inner peace. When others sense that their actions or words cannot easily manipulate or provoke you, a natural respect emerges. They recognize that you operate from a space of integrity and clarity, not from fear or insecurity. Silence communicates without appearing forceful. Words can be persuasive, but they can also reveal weakness. Pleading over, explaining, or attempting to justify oneself often dilutes respect because it signals neediness or dependence. Silence, on the other hand, is non-negotiable. It does not seek validation. It does not attempt to argue or control. It simply exists, steady, calm, and unwavering. This steadiness becomes magnetic because it cannot be hurried, pressured, or easily understood. Human beings are naturally curious about what they cannot immediately grasp. The more someone resists the impulse to fill the void, the more others feel compelled to seek understanding, to notice what is absent, and to recognize the depth of presence that remains. There is also a transformative aspect to silence. It creates space for the other person to feel the natural consequences of their actions. When boundaries are clear and respected, and when responses are measured or delayed, accountability emerges organically. Actions that might have been ignored or taken lightly are suddenly illuminated. By stepping back and allowing silence to do its work, you are not punishing or coercing, you are simply allowing reality to align with integrity. This type of presence, quiet, firm, and self-contained, cannot be manufactured or imitated. It signals a level of self-respect that is inherently dignified and deeply magnetic. Silence also allows for the cultivation of mystery and intrigue. Constant communication, oversharing, and predictable availability leave little room for imagination. There is a natural tendency to undervalue what is always present. Silence reintroduces the unknown, the unseen, and the unspoken. It invites curiosity, reflection, and even longing. It is in the quiet moments When no words are spoken and no messages are sent, that memories are replayed, emotions are felt more intensely, and the mind begins to measure absence against presence. The person on the receiving end begins to appreciate the layers, the subtlety, and the depth that were previously overlooked, and respect naturally follows. Finally, silence is a form of self-respect in action. It is the acknowledgement that your worth is not contingent on constant validation or attention. It is the practice of prioritizing your inner world over external reactions. It is the deliberate decision to operate from clarity, dignity, and authenticity. When others sense this, they instinctively adjust their perception. Respect is not demanded, it is mirrored. The quality of your presence or your purposeful absence communicates more profoundly than any words ever could. Through silence, boundaries are honored, reflection is invited, emotional equilibrium is maintained, mystery is cultivated, and self-respect is embodied. The power of silence is subtle yet undeniable. It is a force that reshapes dynamics, rewires perception, and restores balance. It teaches without teaching, influences without coercion, and draws attention without effort. It reminds us that true connection is not about constant availability or pursuit. It is about presence that is intentional, energy that is self-contained, and the quiet assertion of value that cannot be ignored. One of the most transformative realizations in relationships, attraction, and personal growth is the understanding that self-respect is far more powerful than fear of loss. Many people live in a perpetual state of tension, reacting to perceived threats of abandonment, rejection, or loss. They believe that maintaining attention, affection, or loyalty requires constant effort, pleading, or sacrifice. This fear can dominate choices, words, and actions, subtly eroding one's dignity, power, and authentic expression. Yet the paradox is that the very act of clinging, of surrendering one's boundaries, or of allowing insecurity to dictate behavior is what diminishes respect, attachment, and attraction. When self-respect becomes the guiding force, fear of loss is no longer the master, it becomes irrelevant. Self-respect is not arrogance, entitlement, or detachment from emotional depth. It is the conscious recognition of one's value, a steadfast understanding that one is complete, whole, and worthy independent of external validation. When this awareness is cultivated, every action, every response, every choice radiates confidence. The subtlety of this confidence is magnetic. It communicates silently. I know my worth. I do not require permission or approval. I will not compromise myself for temporary comfort or fleeting attention. Such energy is impossible to ignore. It commands respect naturally because it operates from an unshakable center rather than a reactive edge. Fear of loss, by contrast, often manifests as over-communication, emotional bargaining, or attempts to control outcomes. It creates tension and desperation. One's value, instead of being projected through self-possession, is constantly questioned, negotiated, and diminished. Yet fear of loss is always illusory. It imagines the worst, projects scarcity, and misaligns perception with reality. When fear dominates, decisions are made to avoid perceived threats rather than to honor personal integrity. People become willing to tolerate disrespect, justify neglect, or compromise themselves for a chance at temporary connection. This dynamic is exactly what undermines attraction. Human beings are instinctively drawn to strength, confidence, and stability and repelled by neediness, anxiety, or over-investment. Self-respect, when cultivated, transforms this dynamic completely. It reframes the experience of connection not as a negotiation of need, but as a mutual exchange between equals. When you respect yourself, your energy communicates that you are available for connection only on your terms. You do not chase. You do not beg. You do not diminish yourself to meet another's expectations. This clarity is profoundly magnetic because it establishes a natural hierarchy of value. You are aligned with your own standards, and nothing less can sway you. Fear of loss diminishes in the face of such presence because the mind recognizes that what is truly valuable cannot be forced or manipulated. Another important aspect of self-respect is the understanding that loss is not failure. Losing someone or witnessing someone drift away is often interpreted as a personal inadequacy when guided by fear. When self-respect is cultivated, however, the lens shifts. Loss is seen as information, as a redirection, or as a natural boundary in life. It is no longer a threat to one's identity, value, or happiness. This mindset is liberating because it removes the reactive urgency that fear imposes. When the energy is no longer reactive, it becomes attractive. Others are drawn to the calm, grounded, and self-contained presence that emerges. Self-respect also empowers emotional sovereignty. When someone operates from fear of loss, they are at the mercy of another's actions, moods, and decisions. Emotions are contingent, and energy is scattered. Self-respect allows emotional independence. You are able to engage fully, deeply, and authentically without allowing another's choices to destabilize your inner state. This emotional sovereignty communicates silently you are whole, resilient, and unattached to the need for approval. It is a magnetism that cannot be manufactured or faked because it arises from truth, not strategy. Moreover, self-respect rewrites behavior in subtle but profound ways. It shifts the approach from reaction to creation. Instead of responding to every perceived threat of loss, one acts from integrity, consistency, and presence. Boundaries are clear, values are honored, and actions are deliberate. In relationships, this clarity is immediately felt. Others sense that attempts to control, manipulate, or test will be ineffective. Respect naturally rises because they recognize the authenticity and power that underpins every action. Fear of loss cannot coexist with this energy because the foundation of the individual's world is internal, not external. Self-respect also cultivates resilience and patience. In the face of perceived separation or distance, fear often triggers impulsive attempts to reclaim attention or to secure connection. Self-respect, by contrast, allows time, space, and perspective. It trusts that what is meant to be or what is aligned will naturally return. It values quality over quantity, essence over appearances, and authenticity over compliance. This patience, combined with steadfast integrity, creates an energy that is rare and magnetic. It invites attention not through coercion but through alignment, not through pleading but through presence, not through fear but through certainty. In essence, self-respect transforms the experience of connection, attraction, and loss. It elevates value above scarcity, clarity above confusion, and presence above pursuit. When self-respect is fully embodied, fear of loss becomes irrelevant because one is no longer seeking validation or attachment externally. One's energy is whole, complete, and magnetic. Actions flow from integrity rather than from reaction, and presence communicates power more effectively than words ever could. The magnetic effect is subtle yet undeniable. Those who once took you for granted feel the shift. Those who underestimated your value recognize the energy they cannot control. And even absence becomes a space in which desire and respect naturally emerge. One of the most powerful yet subtle forces in human connection is emotional contrast. It is often overlooked because it is not loud, it does not demand attention, and it cannot be measured in overt actions alone. Yet emotional contrast is the quiet architect of longing, attraction, and attachment. It is the principle that the depth of desire is shaped not simply by presence, but by variation, the dance between intensity and calm, engagement and distance, openness and mystery. When emotional contrast is employed naturally, it draws the mind, the heart, and the soul into a magnetic orbit that cannot be easily broken. At the core of emotional contrast is the understanding that human beings are wired to respond to variability. The brain notices patterns, seeks predictability, and takes constant presence for granted. When someone is always available, always reactive, always emotionally predictable, the mind adjusts. Emotions stabilize, interest wanes, and the sense of longing diminishes. Contrast interrupts this pattern. It introduces shifts in energy, pauses in attention, and moments of subtle absence that trigger reflection and desire. It is not about manipulation, it is about honoring the natural rhythm of presence and absence, intensity and calm, engagement and restraint. Emotional contrast begins with self-awareness. One cannot create contrast artificially without understanding one's own inner landscape. It emerges from authenticity, not performance. When you are grounded in your own life, your emotions are not dictated by someone else's attention or absence. You feel deeply, but you do not overreact. You care, but you do not cling. This balance creates a natural contrast because your energy is dynamic, unpredictable, yet consistent in its integrity. The effect is magnetic because it signals to the other person that your world is rich, full, and independent, yet still inviting connection in subtle, compelling ways. Contrast also sparks longing by creating emotional peaks and valleys. Consider moments of intense connection, the laughter, the shared intimacy, the deep conversations, followed by moments of silence, space, or unavailability. This rhythm is not harsh or punitive, it is natural. The emotional highs become amplified because they are not constant. Desire is strongest when it is tempered by moments of absence, moments of reflection, and moments of curiosity. Without contrast, intensity flattens. With contrast, intensity becomes irresistible, drawing attention and emotional energy toward the source of intrigue. Another layer of emotional contrast is found in the energy you project. It is not about dramatic gestures or overt unpredictability. True contrast exists in subtle shifts, the way your focus deepens when you are present versus the effortless grace you exhibit when you step back. The way your joy and engagement feel electric when you connect versus the calm, untouchable presence you maintain when you do not seek attention. These variations communicate value without explanation. They are felt, not argued for, and they embed themselves in memory and desire in ways that words cannot replicate. Emotional contrast also engages the imagination. When someone is fully predictable, the mind does not wander. There is no tension, no curiosity, no replaying of moments in memory. But when contrast exists, the mind begins to fill in gaps. Absence becomes fertile ground for imagination. Moments are replayed, conversations are analyzed, and small gestures are magnified. This mental and emotional engagement creates longing organically. It is the subconscious pull of difference, of unpredictability, and of emotional texture that draws someone closer, even without overt pursuit. Importantly, emotional contrast does not equate to emotional manipulation. It is not about playing games or deliberately confusing someone. It is about embodying a rich inner life that naturally varies in energy and expression. It is about allowing your authentic highs and calm moments to coexist without overcompensation or performance. People are drawn to authenticity, and the presence of genuine contrast communicates depth, complexity, and presence. It tells the other person, without words, that your life is multifaceted, your emotions are real, and your value is not dependent on their attention or validation. Contrast also teaches appreciation. When someone experiences moments of connection interspersed with moments of absence or calm, they begin to notice the quality of your presence more acutely. They begin to measure effort, attention, and energy, and they naturally develop a sense of gratitude and longing. It is in the space between interactions, in the pauses, and in the subtleties of presence and absence that desire deepens. Emotional contrast creates a rhythm that the mind and heart crave, a pattern of engagement that is both stimulating and grounding, compelling and respectful. Finally, emotional contrast strengthens personal boundaries and self-possession. By allowing yourself to fluctuate naturally, fully present in moments of connection, fully centered in moments of independence, you communicate value and integrity. You are not swayed by the fear of loss, nor are you reduced to seeking approval. The contrast between your presence and your autonomy is magnetic because it signals that you are whole, complete and unshakable, yet capable of connection on your terms. It invites longing not through need, but through alignment with your authentic self, creating a pull that is profound, undeniable, and deeply magnetic. In the landscape of human relationships, the most profound influence is often the quietest. The power of subtle reminders is not found in grand gestures, dramatic declarations, or constant messages. It is found in the small intentional cues that communicate your presence, value, and energy without demanding attention or recognition. These reminders operate on a level that bypasses resistance, skepticism, and rationalization. They do not coerce, they resonate. They create an echo in the mind and heart that persists long after you have withdrawn. Subtle reminders work because human perception is attuned to nuance. The mind notices patterns, symbols and cues even when they are understated. A fleeting smile, a carefully timed gesture, a memory shared indirectly, these are not attempts to control behavior, but to awaken recognition of your qualities, your essence, and your impact on the other person's life. When employed with authenticity, subtle reminders remind someone of your presence without overstepping boundaries, without creating pressure, and without signaling need. They plant seeds in the subconscious that grow into reflection, longing, and appreciation. One of the key principles of subtle reminders is indirectness. They are rarely explicit. They do not demand a response or an acknowledgement. Instead, they exist as quiet nudges in the other person's awareness. For example, a thoughtfully chosen word, a shared memory that surfaces naturally, or an action that hints at your ongoing growth and joy. These gestures communicate that your life continues to flourish independently. This indirectness is crucial because overt pursuit diminishes value, whereas subtlety strengthens it. The less someone can control or predict your presence, the more they feel compelled to reflect on it, to wonder about it, and to notice its absence. Another dimension of subtle reminders is timing. Timing is not about creating manipulation. It is about aligning presence with perception. A subtle reminder is most powerful when it is unexpected, when it emerges naturally rather than being scheduled or forced. The element of surprise amplifies its effect. A single word, a brief message, or a quiet action at the right moment can ripple through the other person's thoughts and emotions in ways that prolonged attention or constant communication never could. Timing turns small gestures into profound statements without overtly articulating desire, need, or expectation. The power of subtle reminders also lies in their ability to reflect your growth and self-possession. When you are continually engaged in your own life, pursuing passions, achieving goals, cultivating joy, every interaction, every hint of your presence becomes a reminder of what you bring into the world. You do not need to announce it or prove it. Your energy communicates it naturally. Subtle reminders of this kind are magnetic because they reflect abundance. They communicate that you are whole, complete, and independent, yet inviting connection by virtue of the life you are living. This creates a silent tension in the mind of the other person, a recognition that they cannot replicate or fully possess what you naturally embody. Subtle reminders also capitalize on memory and association. Human emotion is deeply tied to memory. Moments, experiences, and sensations linger long after they occur. A carefully placed reminder, a song shared in passing, a mention of a place or event that holds meaning, a fleeting visual cue awakens memories and emotions that were dormant. These reminders do not impose, they awaken. They cause someone to pause, to replay moments, to consider the depth of your presence, and to feel the absence of it. In doing so, subtle reminders cultivate longing organically, without coercion, without drama, and without overt pursuit. Moreover, subtle reminders respect boundaries while maintaining influence. They are inherently non-intrusive. Unlike persistent messages, calls, or demands for attention, subtle reminders operate in harmony with autonomy. They allow the other person to reflect and respond on their own terms. This respect enhances the magnetism of the gesture because it communicates integrity and confidence. When someone senses that your presence is not contingent on their actions, and yet they are gently reminded of your essence, a profound psychological pull emerges. They begin to notice the layers of your personality, your energy, and your value that were previously taken for granted. Another key aspect is repetition without predictability. Subtle reminders are most effective when they recur naturally but not consistently. The rhythm should be irregular enough to create curiosity, reflection, and attention. Human minds are drawn to patterns, but they are equally intrigued by variation within those patterns. This unpredictability in subtle cues allows the other person to internalize them without resistance, to build anticipation and longing, and to engage emotionally in a way that constant presence or explicit pursuit cannot achieve. Finally, subtle reminders cultivate emotional depth and resonance. They operate on the principle that less is more, that presence is felt more strongly when it is measured and meaningful. They bypass rational arguments, explanations, and persuasion, and instead communicate through energy, memory, and subconscious recognition. Each reminder reinforces your value, your independence, and your presence in the other person's awareness. They create a delicate balance of attraction, reflection, and longing that is sustainable, dignified, and profoundly effective. The power of subtle reminders is transformative because it allows influence without neediness, presence without overextension, and connection without compromise. It teaches that the most profound effects are rarely loud, and that longing, respect, and attention are drawn not through insistence, but through the gentle, consistent, and authentic echoes of one's being, the quiet signals that speak louder than words, and the energy that leaves an indelible imprint on the mind and heart of another. In the complex dynamics of human relationships and attraction, one of the most overlooked yet profoundly powerful principles is the supremacy of inner transformation over external pursuit. Many believe that influence, attachment, or longing can be achieved through effort, attention, or repeated gestures directed outward through chasing, persuading, or attempting to prove worth. Yet the truth is paradoxical. The most magnetic force, the force that draws hearts, minds, and attention naturally, emerges not from what is done externally, but from what is cultivated internally. Transformation of the self rewrites perception, reshapes dynamics, and commands respect in a way that pursuit, regardless of intensity, cannot replicate. Inner transformation begins with awareness. It is the deliberate practice of turning attention inward, of examining one's thoughts, beliefs, and emotional patterns. It is the recognition that attraction and influence are reflections, not impositions. The energy you emit, the sense of presence you carry, and the subtle cues that others perceive are born from your inner landscape. When you are focused solely on external pursuit, you may gain temporary attention, but it is attention rooted in convenience, novelty, or manipulation. When you cultivate transformation within, every action, gesture, and word becomes an authentic extension of your growth, and this authenticity is magnetic. At the core of inner transformation is alignment. When your values, desires, and behaviors are coherent, you communicate a subtle but undeniable confidence. You are no longer acting from fear, need, or insecurity. You are acting from clarity, purpose, and self-possession. This coherence attracts naturally because it reflects stability and depth. External pursuit, by contrast, often communicates urgency, inconsistency, and dependency. It signals to others that your emotional state is contingent on their responses, which diminishes magnetism. Transformation ensures that your energy is independent, radiant, and centered, making your presence more compelling than any act of pursuit ever could be. Inner transformation also changes the quality of attention you receive. When your focus is on becoming the most complete version of yourself, when your energy is invested in growth, mastery, and joy, the way others perceive you shifts organically. They notice not because you demand recognition, but because your presence, confidence, and vitality are impossible to ignore. This is the subtle alchemy of attraction. You are no longer chasing someone to capture attention. Attention is naturally drawn to the richness, authenticity, and integrity of your being. Transformation generates its own gravity, and what is gravitational cannot be resisted. Another aspect of inner transformation is emotional sovereignty. External pursuit often stems from a desire to influence, control, or secure outcomes, which leaves one vulnerable to emotional turbulence. Transformation shifts the paradigm. Emotional energy becomes self-contained. Your happiness, fulfillment, and sense of worth are cultivated internally, making you resilient in the face of distance, indifference, or rejection. This emotional autonomy is magnetic because it communicates that you are whole and unshakable. People are instinctively drawn to those whose emotional states are stable, who navigate life with poise, and who are not swayed by external pressures or whims. Transformation also reshapes the narrative in the mind of the other person. When someone is pursuing externally, their behavior is transactional. They are giving attention in hopes of receiving something in return. When transformation occurs within, your presence is non-transactional, yet profoundly influential. Others begin to notice the subtleties, the confidence, the joy, the calm authority that they cannot manufacture or control. They recognize a depth that is independent of circumstance, a strength that is neither aggressive nor demanding, and a magnetism that emerges naturally from integrity and self-mastery. The principle of contrast also applies here. Pursuit can feel heavy, predictable, and exhausting. Transformation, on the other hand, is dynamic, radiant, and unpredictable in the most magnetic sense. When you focus on your own growth and evolution, your energy fluctuates naturally, sometimes vibrant and radiant, sometimes calm and reflective, without being dictated by the desires or actions of another. This emotional and energetic contrast draws attention, triggers reflection, and awakens longing. People are intrigued by what they cannot control and inspired by what they cannot replicate. Transformation creates that intrigue effortlessly. Inner transformation also cultivates patience and discernment. External pursuit often leads to impulsive behaviors, constant messaging, seeking approval, or attempting to reignite interest prematurely. Transformation allows you to step back without anxiety, to maintain integrity without compromise, and to observe dynamics with clarity. This patience communicates self-respect, authenticity, and depth. It creates an invisible tension that draws attention not through force or manipulation, but through the quiet certainty that your life is thriving, regardless of external outcomes. Finally, inner transformation rewires desire itself. It allows you to move from seeking validation to embodying value. Your magnetism becomes a reflection of your inner completeness, not a product of external manipulation. External pursuit may temporarily capture attention, but it cannot inspire genuine longing or respect. Transformation, however, awakens the natural psychological and emotional processes in others. They begin to notice your presence, reflect on your energy, and feel drawn toward the fullness of your being. Attraction becomes effortless because it is rooted in authenticity, integrity, and the power of a self-contained life. Inner transformation outshines external pursuit because it changes everything: the energy you radiate, the way others perceive you, and the nature of connection itself. It is subtle, profound, and enduring. It demonstrates that influence, attachment, and desire are consequences of being rather than doing, of presence rather than performance, and of alignment rather than desperation. When fully embodied, transformation commands attention naturally, shapes perception without effort, and cultivates a magnetic energy that cannot be imitated, forced, or diminished